My name is Monica Kretschmer, and I'm the founder and CEO of the Universal Women's Network, Women of Inspiration Awards, and this is the Women of Inspiration Women Driving Change panel. We have such a wealth of knowledge on this panel from across Canada and even from New York City today. So it is my pleasure to introduce our panel on Carmen Vetian, who is the owner and partner of Carmen Vetian Professional Corporation. We have Jackie Sanz, who is the managing director for risk and compliance for Protiviti. We have Lindsay Jones, who is the investment banker for Scotia Bank. And of course, Margaret Adu from Calgary, Alberta. She is the founder and managing director at Omega Group Incorporated. So ladies, I am so super excited to have the opportunity to welcome your leadership voice today on the panel.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Monica.
Well, I believe let's just jump right in here. So when the world stopped, women kept going, and women are going to be driving the change for the next decade. So where I'd like to start with is one of those topics, paving the road for leaders, right? We all say that, and the reason why we're doing the panel is that 67% of women learn from other leaders. So ladies, I would love to know, and we'll start with you, Carmen, what are some of the most valuable lessons that you have learned from other leaders?
I think I think part of what I've learned over the years in my career in various different roles is that you have to be able to adapt and to change with the environment around you. I've always looked to other women in business and other individuals that are climbing the corporate ladder and, working towards their success in their career, and just tried to see what kinds of things that they're doing, and in some ways emulating that, but in other ways just seeing what works for me, and essentially trying to basically just stay confident and, be able to get myself out of a rut when I start to feel a little bit, down on where things are headed or how things are going. Giving myself that, that pass and that, kindness that sometimes things don't go exactly as you planned, and being able to adapt from that. And I always tell my kids even, and try to teach them as well, that it's, life is going to throw you curveballs continuously. So I think the biggest thing for me is it's how you adapt and how you pick yourself up from that basically will let you get to that next point, right? So, when a window or when a door closes, a window will open and another way will present itself. So just trying to stay positive and just to adapt with that flow.
Beautiful. And Lindsay, what about yourself?
I think one of the things that I've always tried to emulate in other leaders is that I think oftentimes people underestimate the value of their big decisions, they overestimate the value of their big decisions, and they underestimate the value of their small decisions. So once you've made the big decision on what career you're going to pursue, what company you're going to work for, what job you're going to take, is what are the small decisions that actually form the basis for your contribution once you get there. Regardless of where you end up, I think it's kind of that day-to-day that really starts compounding over time. So it's always been trying to find, how can I show up to my fullest self in that moment in a way that actually brings value to the broader group? Because in the end, all the big moments are built off all the small moments. Beautiful.
Very well said. And I just have to say, your mentees are very lucky to have your leadership. Margaret, how about yourself?
What I've come to learn as a woman in a leadership role, or learn from women who are leaders, is that we all have big strengths, and we complement each other that way, and nobody above anybody. So as a great leader, you know when to sit and listen and when to stand and contribute. And so great leaders bring the best out of other women. And that's what drives me with my leadership. And so you make people better that way. So I do not sit there as the boss and leader. I sit there as a colleague, and I'm learning from you all as we learn from each other. That's what I have from leadership.
Well, pure gold, I have to say. Now we can go home because I've got enough. Just kidding. I truly do believe, and that's the purpose for these panels, from the diverse perspectives, from different industries, backgrounds. So it is really how we can lift other women up to rise and share, not hold all our cards, but share the wisdom that we have. So thank you, Margaret. How about yourself, Jackie?
Yeah, so the approach I took was a little different, and I, quite young, knowing I wanted to be in financial services, I sort of picked existing CEOs and, big names that everybody knows, and really observed and watched them. And I noticed three things, and that's how I try to, imbue the leadership culture, and certainly for all of my advisees and the youth today that I try to get them to step into leadership roles I profess. And one is, you'll notice every very successful leader doesn't do it alone. They are part of a community. And what matters is not, as Lindsay said, the decisions they made. It's the fact that they surrounded themselves with a community of people who know, whatever the content is, who are great at whatever those things are, and they are able to place trust and reliance in that community. And as a result of that, these leaders lead with what I call purpose, and they lead fearlessly. And that's because they know they have a community. And so for me, my entire career, right straight, even within university, have always been about build a network, understand who knows what, who's good at what, stay in touch, and draw on that network. It doesn't have to be people you work with. It could be just peers that are great at, public speaking or whatever the case may be. But if you have a community around you that you can leverage and reach out to pick yourself up, as Carmen said, on those rough days or days that you have big decisions and you just don't know what path to go down, that's what your community is for. And whatever you hear from them, believe it, be purposeful, and lead fearlessly.
Beautiful. So women seen, heard, and valued, so that we can actually build those communities. Why is it so important for women to know their worth, right? And to learn how to advocate for themselves and how to negotiate and ask for what they want. So Carmen, why is that so critical?
I think that is very critical because as women in business, we tend to have more barriers in achieving the goals that our counterparts in male positions could possibly have. And for women, we often will, undervalue ourselves. You don't tend to realize that your achievements are equally as important and as large, and they're often not as celebrated because it's just something that we do. As women, we put on so many different hats, whether it's, wife, mother, friend, entrepreneur, whatever, and we always try to give 100% at everything that we do. And I think that being able to understand that there's a lot of worth, even if you haven't yet achieved your goals, and just making sure that we're celebrating that and taking the time to appreciate that the efforts that we're putting in.
Beautiful. Lindsay, how about yourself?
This is a topic I've given a lot of thought to. It comes up a lot with the mentee discussions. And one of the biggest things that I found, my father always said growing up that confidence comes from competence. Therefore, if you're competent, you'll be confident. And there's a major issue with this, is that when you graduate from school, you're no longer assigned a letter grade to inform you that you are now competent. You've made it. Now you can profess this confidence to the world. And because the world is very subjective, I actually found at work that how competent you are viewed is actually dependent on how confidently you portray yourself. So you get this circular reference, the chicken and egg thing. And women disproportionately downplay both themselves and their abilities. And so this was a massive paradigm shift for me, but it was the acknowledgement at some point in time, I was about 2 years in and gunning for the accelerated promotion. And, I kind of left and I was like, they want me to portray something that it doesn't feel authentic. And I had kind of this light bulb moment where it was more authentic to me to shrink and play small than it was to portray who I actually was. And this was like a massive paradigm shift for me, because shrinking should not feel more authentic than inflating yourself. And if you can look and say, I've never want to be the kind of person who inflates myself, you should apply that same logic and say, well, I've never want to be the person who shrinks myself. So I kind of came to this conclusion that in the same way that confidence and humility requires authenticity, I actually thought confidence does as well. So from there, I thought, you know, I'd kind of retrained my definition of confidence, but I was like, if you're constantly assessing how not to come off as arrogant, you're spending a lot of energy on perception and not a lot of energy on becoming good at what you do. So instead, removing that barrier and saying, okay, if I'm going to be, like, my definition of confidence now is I want to be able to show up to do the best that I can to the best of my capabilities, which can only happen if people know what your capabilities are. So there's no reason to shy away. And I actually had a mentee say, when all this was going on, actually, with the award and stuff for the Millennial Leader, and one of them said, you know, I hope one day it, you know, I wish it was as natural for me as it was for you. And I said, I just want to be clear, this was not natural. This was so intentional over 2 years. And I'm very flattered that you feel like it comes across as a natural characteristic, because it didn't start there. But as soon as you give yourself permission to do that, it gives other people the permission to do the same. And where you shine a light, other people feel like they can as well.
Beautiful. And I love the authenticity. I think that the more that we can share, hey, it's not easy for any of us to step into that spotlight, but it's our responsibility to share that is beautiful. So thank you very much for sharing. Margaret, how about yourself?
Well, mine is from a different, first of all, I'm Black, and I wasn't born here. So, and even from Africa, women are viewed the lesser gender, right? And growing up there too, you couldn't talk at your mom or dad. You couldn't talk back. So coming here, I realized that it was even worse for me being Black with no Canadian experience. They say I speak differently, I have a gap in my teeth and all that stuff. But then I learned quickly that the only way I could stand the test of being worthy of me was to love me the way I was created. I quickly figured out that I didn't care how I looked or how I spoke or what I felt like. I've got to make the other person know that I'm as worthy as they are. And you are no better than me, and I'm not beneath you. So I took a bold stand and said that straight into my first boss's face. And I said, this is who I am. And I'm not lesser than you in any way. You give me a chance, I'll prove myself I can do the job like you can do it. I won't do it better than you, but I can do it like you can do it. And I won't do it lesser than you. So I've come to, at all my motivational speeches, I dwell on loving you first and embracing who you are and gaining that confidence. Because if you embrace the way you are, you can move mountains. Mm. So that's how I've come to see that I'm worth of who I am. I'm worthy. But on the other hand, everybody likes to be appreciated and validated. No two ways, depending on who you are. So it's nice to see. I'll always go back to how you awarded me that and appreciated what I did in other organizations. Because never in a million years did I think that one day I'll get this award or that, or someone will say, good job, Margaret, you're smart. I'm like, really? Because every time I thought I wasn't that good enough from coming from back home, because I had all brothers. I'm the only daughter among 7 siblings. So I always had to fight to be seen. And I was the smallest of all of them too. So for me, the advice I've always given the youth, which I talk to them a lot, is just love who you are and then train the way you are. And don't compare yourself to anybody, because we all have different strengths. I keep on telling them that. We all have different qualities and strengths. And so for us, and I love the lady talking about community, because I believe in that too. Because it's not one person who does it. But embrace yourself and love who you are, and you you be as worthy as anybody else. And that's the advice I give to anybody. That's how I came to get out of it. There's a lot. It's too long for me to talk and talk, but that's my story.
Well, thank you for that, Margaret. And I think it's really important to realize that it's, you know, a lot of us leaders, it's taken us a lot of time to get to this stage where we actually really like who we are and, you know, we're okay in our skin, right? And it doesn't happen overnight. It's easier said than done. But it is, you know, leaders that if you can aspire to do this and to get to that point, you know, that's where you should aspire to be. Love yourself at every stage of the journey, and it will continue to grow. So thank you very much for that. That's great advice. Jackie, how about yourself?
Yeah, I have similar philosophy as Margaret. I believe women just naturally, and it's through evolution across all cultures, we're nurturers. We like to support. We like to step in, help, take care of people, you know, help people achieve some goal or milestone. And really, for me, it was early on in my career that watching sort of women above me you know, from a meritocracy perspective, expect to get something and then they don't. It occurred to me, women are great at supporting others and terrible at supporting themselves. They don't really look inward. And that's, for me, a bit sort of the paradigm shift that Lindsay was talking about, that it was, if we're such good nurturers and we're so good at supporting the team and taking one for the team and, you know, doing what we need to do, why aren't we doing it for ourselves? And that's when I literally came up with the process of every single day, every night, I spend an hour, literally me time. It's always a bath of some kind, bubbles and, you know, candles and everything else. And I think about, what did I not do for myself today that I should have? And what am I going to do for me tomorrow in the context of, you know, work and leading and activity? And that becomes my objective, sort of not tactical work stuff, but that personal development objective. Every single day I do that. I even do it on vacation. And it's really important to remember that we also need to be nurtured, and we know ourselves better than anyone else. So support yourself, nurture yourself. And that's where my concept of leading with purpose and leading fearlessly, just trust that if you fall, it's okay. You're going to get up. You're going to get up. You'll figure it out, and it'll get better the next time. And if your road is windy and your path, you know, has many deviations, go for the journey. It's okay. You'll be fine.
Love it. Great advice. And, you know, I could see the sign on your door, Jackie, that says, Mom is building herself up. Do not disturb. You know, like really, what a great routine, you know, and it really is that consistency of, and a reminder, and it's not that you have it all figured out all the time. You know, would you agree? I mean, let's talk about having it all, Carmen. Do you believe that women could have it all?
Am I dreaming, or is this reality? Well, you know what? I think in general, most people would say that women can't have it all. But I think as women, if we basically look for, I guess, you know, the silver lining in everything, that sometimes you have it all, it's just not in the format that you anticipated it coming in, or it's not in the order that you were expecting things to happen. And so I think that whole idea of work-life balance, you know, it comes and goes. So I think you can feel one moment that you have it, and then the next minute you're feeling overwhelmed, and it all kind of builds into that cycle of, you know, it's like the roller coaster, right? It's one moment you're having a great day, things are falling in line, you do feel like you're on top of the world, and you feel like you do have it all. You've got that balance, your kids are happy, your career is going good, you've ticked off all of your to-do list and all of that kind of stuff, and like Jackie said, you've done your self-care for the day and everything. And then I think the next day something just kind of, you know, gets in your way, and it's that stumbling block that you just have to kind of figure out how to get around and go through. So I think that part of having it all is also perception.
Beautiful. Lindsay, how about yourself?
This might still be the young part of me, but I like to believe that you can, and that order matters. And I think your last point there, Carmen, is probably pretty valid, is what that actually looks like. And the perception to who, I think, matters a lot as well. One thing that I kind of move forward with on this, and we actually have this conversation, having it all, and it's actually called that, the have it all conversation, because regardless of what I can or can't have in the future, I at least want to be striving towards it, because, and this is sort of a play off of what Sheryl Sandberg spoke about, but that you don't know today what will be the limitations in the future, and you don't know today what you're going to prioritize more in the future, and you don't know when that turning point is going to happen. So even from, like, it's incredibly important to me to be a mother one day. And I don't know when that turning point is going to happen, but until it does, I'm, my sights are in quite high. So right now I'm kind of working with assume you can have it all. And then as those forks in the road come up, then make the call. And avoid making that call too early, because we are in fact extremely poor predictors of what we will want in the future.
Well said. Margaret?
Well, having it all is depends on the individual. My all might be different from your all. And I don't think we can have it all in one day. But we can have it all in 365 days. So dividing yourself, because my me time could be tomorrow. Today could be my busiest day, and tomorrow is like I'm just taking care of me. So you can't have everything and do everything at the same time. I believe in that. But you can have everything. Pair your perception of everything. It's up to your perception within a period of time as you have planned it. That's what I believe.
It's kind of like COVID. Everybody was experiencing COVID. However, some had a dinghy, some had a life raft, some had a speedboat, and some had a yacht, right?
Yeah.
So, I think that's kind of like, and have it all to me is not the same as having it all to you, Lindsay, or Margaret, or Jackie, or Carmen. We're going to define having it all very differently, right? Yeah. Based on what we choose to have.
Yeah, I mean, you have sometimes, like I said, it's that perception too of some days you're on cloud nine. You feel like everything's lined up, everything's in place, right? You're going to work and all the lights turn green as you're driving up to them, kind of thing, right? And then other days you have things that get in your way and impede that. And then you get back to the circle of, okay, it's how you pick yourself up from that and move on and, get past that and get yourself back into the right headspace too.
And Jackie, I'd love to get your insight on this one.
Sure. So for me, having it all isn't something that refers to milestones. For me, having it all is about a little bit the theme of sort of what everybody's been saying, but it's about a journey. And you want to take some journey because, at the end of every path, there's something there that you strive for. But for me, having it all is literally the process of the journey. You're in control of you. You make your own decisions. Nobody tells you what you must or must not do. You don't have to be in that job, or you don't have to listen to somebody scream at you. You can walk away. Like, you have the power. This is my idea of leading fearlessly. You decide for you. And so for me, the concept of people saying, well, it's hard to have it all, I think it's because people hide behind the fear of not just take it. Take what you want. Take the journey that you want. Windy, not windy. It might be difficult. Sometimes it's, influenced by decisions others can make. That's okay if it takes a bit longer. So change your tack, make another decision. But to me, it's really about the journey. And I think we spend too much time worrying about what that thing is and did we get there and how fast are we going to get there and is our clock ticking, all of that stuff. For me, using the example of having a child, sure, but you can adopt, you can foster. I mean, there's just so many things. There's so much out there. Just be informed and make your own decisions. And I personally think you can have whatever you want. And I ascribe this theory to anybody. This is not just about women. Like, just anybody can have at any age whatever it is they want by making fearless decisions and getting the support they need from whomever they need to get there. That's how I view it. Maybe I'm too optimistic, but that's my view.
It all depends on what you define as all.
Well, exactly. And all to me is not about things. It's about experiences, right? Whether it's like Lindsay's comment about motherhood. Let me tell you, there are some tough times, Lindsay, especially in the early days where you wonder, why did I want to do this? And other times it's fabulous. So I think at the end of the day, it should be focused on experiential items and everything else will come with it. But I'm making it very simple, but it's how I like to speak to younger women when I'm mentoring and coaching, high school kids, where it's like, what you decide today is fine for today. You can change your mind tomorrow. Your path is going to have hundreds of thousands of forks in it. It's going to be windy. Explore it all and you will get what you get, and what you think you want now, tomorrow maybe it's not what you want anymore. So the idea of having it all needs to be relative to time and experience, right? The passage of just your time and the decisions you make. Does that make sense?
Perfect sense. I actually would love to have a conversation now on empowering our future leaders. And I know that there's daughters, there's mentees, there's, people in your worlds that you're empowering. So what advice would you like to share to empower our future leaders and help them on their journey?
So for me, that's dear to my heart. It all started with my own daughter. For me, it's about self-advocacy. As an individual, even young girls know what they need in the moment, right? Like sometimes it's very tactical. I don't know this stuff for my math test, for example. So you know what you need. It's okay to ask for help. It's okay to advocate for extra whatever it is you need to be able to achieve that immediate tactical goal. And the more you practice self-advocacy, the more, and this is a little bit like what Lindsay was saying, the more you start to feel competent. It doesn't matter what your grade is or what your, how you were scored. At the beginning, you didn't know how to do this. You now know how to do this. Who cares if it's an A, a B, a C? You now know something. Feel confident in that and enjoy the competency. And as you feel the comfort of each self-advocate sort of effort, it becomes a habit. And the more you do something, practice makes habit, you become your own self-advocate. And that's why I think decisions and achieving anything, whether it's the self-worth or even becoming good leaders, you need to advocate for you before you advocate for anybody else. You need to be good at that.
Wonderful. And Lindsay, do you want to jump in?
Sure. Yeah, there's almost so many places to take this one. I think one of them is simply when you're trying to empower yourself, especially when you're young, and the future seems so daunting and there's so many possibilities, is I always tell people, I'm like, you don't know what you want to do. You're 16 years old. You don't know what you want to do. That's perfect. That's exactly where you should be. But in the meantime, position yourself, because the more you position yourself, the more you empower yourself. And so when you're a student, that means go get the GPA, go join the club, go start the club, go follow up on the email nobody replied to you on, go negotiate with your prof because you can. When you enter the workforce, that's defined a little bit differently, but there's all of these little moments to position yourself, and sort of to echo what you were saying, that the more you do that, the more you get comfort in doing that, the more empowered you feel, because you're like, hey, I can work within this world and find a way to find power and influence in small ways and build them. And one of the best things I think you can do, especially when you're young, is find opportunities to do that in low stakes environments. So university is a great one. It's hard to be a leader when you have no leadership experience. So go find the low stakes environments where you can actually develop that. And as you do, the lessons that you learn will stay with you. And then you'll have this little, I almost want to talk about mental toughness, but I call it leveling up, that once you do it the first time, the next time you encounter that same situation, you don't feel that same level of stress, because in your mind you say, I've done this before, I can conquer this. And the more you do that, the more you're able to do that, and your carrying capacity for stress actually increases. So the more you can find the opportunities in low stakes, the more you'll be able to handle them in the high stakes.
Great advice. Thank you so much, Lindsay. How about yourself, Carmen?
I think for empowering youth, part of that for me anyways, with my team, and just even with my own children as well, and other students that I have mentored in the past in various roles, is to help to boost their self-esteem. I try to ask them to shut down their negativity, because there's always a lot of negative self-talk. People will always come and approach and say, oh, I have a stupid question. And I always tell people there is no stupid question. The question you need to ask, and you need to be able to ask it in order to learn and to grow from it. You grow from your mistakes. If you never make mistakes, that means you're never taking chances. It means you're never trying to expand your wings and use the knowledge and to develop your own judgment in your career and in problem solving. So I always encourage people to, when you're encountering a problem and you need some, mentoring, come with the problem, but come with a possible solution, or come with a list of solutions and things that you've contemplated, and the reasons why you think that something may be better than the other. And that way we can work through that, and it helps to teach problem solving skills as well, because surprisingly, problem solving is not something that you can teach easily. So encouraging them to try to learn that on their own, and to try to approach every stumbling block or every challenge in that way is better for them, because then they're going to be able to adapt.
And I think COVID was a beautiful lesson for all of us, is a great reminder, right? Because it really was, everybody had to adapt in a different way, right? So the challenges were, everybody had a different challenge, but everybody had to problem solve together. So thank you very much, Carmen. Margaret.
Oh, mine is very simple. I always advise them on self-worth. It's huge, just like what Lindsay said, and all the others have, they've touched on all those. Their self-worth is big, and they should associate themselves with mentors who would build them, but not ridicule them. What is an association that ridicules you? Please walk away, because they're going to crush you. But even with my children, even when there's a mistake, it's not a mistake. They were trying. So I confidence, but I said, that was a good job. And the way you talk, I always advise the way we talk to them makes a big difference. A typical example is if there's a mistake, if an employee had something done that was not right, I do not reprimand directly. I take the fault as well. So it will be like the advice, like maybe we should have done it this way. Maybe things like that to build them up. So I always advise on self-worth, and self-worth is built based on how you treat others, how you talk to others, and how you want others. So if you don't want it for yourself, don't do it to others. And associate yourself with people who raise you up and appreciate you, validate you. I mean, every little thing you do is appreciated. So you build gradually. I mean, I've always gone back to how I grew up and when I came in, the differences, and how I've grown to love who I am. the saying, love yourself, because you only love yourself because that's all you've got. Love yourself, that's all you've got. Exactly. So from the
sage advice. I'm sorry, I'm breaking up here. I don't mean to interrupt. Did you want to finish?
No, that's good. Everybody said exactly what. We all touch on the right thing, so yeah.
And I would add, sorry, Monica, what I thought was great that Margaret, you just said was the choice of the words. So for example, the word mistake and error is not in my vocabulary. I have my entire life, because my mother never called it that. It's, oh, look, here's a learning opportunity. I would get a test back. I could be in grade 6, grade 5, it didn't matter. Here's my score. It wasn't that, oh, I only got 5 out of 10. Look at these 5 learning opportunities. That's how it was always in my life presented. Never called a mistake, never called an error. Here's an opportunity to learn something. Here's an opportunity to grow. And I think, Margaret, you're right. If it's positioned in a positive sense, if the terminology, the language, everything is presented as an opportunity, it's not negative. So it's not this crushing, just as Carmen said, self-esteem thing. These are opportunities, not bad things.
Right. And I always try to, when there is something like that, whether it is a mistake or something was done incorrectly, whether it's with my kids, my team at work, mentees, I always try to focus on the positives, the things that were also done very well in that situation, because sometimes there may be the wrong outcome with something or a wrong judgment call, but within that there's positivity and strength in the fact that they took the risk, they made a judgment call, there was always something positive that happened with that, and a mistake is just a learning opportunity, like you were saying, Jackie.
No, like I grew up the opposite. So for me to have come this far is huge in my life.
Yeah.
I know what I'm talking about, because I could have been the worst to my children, because I didn't know, I knew the other. So basically, how come you got 50%, or how come you got 5 out of 10? You're dumb, stuff like that. So
that's a very that's something that I suffered with as well, growing up with an Eastern European father, and it was always focusing on the negativity. So it was never a build you up, and I always wanted to make sure that, just even from my own kids to applying it in my career, that I always looked at it as, highlighting the positives, right? Not just the negatives, the positives, and looking at it as a learning opportunity, and just trying to change the way that the individuals, are perceiving themselves, right? So
I think that moving to Canada, of course, I realized that I didn't want that for my children.
Mm-hmm.
It's all for my employees. So for some reason, and I realized that even though women are still trying to have a voice, women had a voice here. You have no idea. So that confidence came out of me. So it was like a mushroom, just shut up. I was like, oh, there's liberation here. I can talk. I can be me. I'm not just a girl or a woman and I have to listen to the guys. No, I can be me. So there were good things about me that helped me to grow and have more self-worth, and I've passed it on to my children. So I look back and say, I've come a long way. Like you're saying, you went through that negativity just like me, but here we are. We've turned it around, so it's all good.
Yeah.
So let me ask you ladies something. We talk about driving change, and of course this is the driving change panel. How is it, and I truly do believe these are great conversations. There's so much knowledge and wisdom from your learned experiences to offer our future leaders, but also our leaders that stand shoulder to shoulder with us, right? I learn from each and every one of you. But how are we going to drive change to continue to break that? It's not a glass ceiling, it is a brick ceiling still, but what are you going to do in your industry, Carmen, to break this brick ceiling that exists?
Wow. Well, hopefully, I guess, leading by example. So, I have female and male staff. Until a couple years ago, I only had female staff. So it was very different mentoring them and, trying to raise them up and inspire them to, basically reach their full potential. And, constantly, I try to have everybody around me constantly in a state of learning as well as myself. So I feel that the more that they're able to learn, the more that they're able to take on, the more empowered they feel, the more confidence that they have, and giving them that room and that leeway to be able to make those mistakes from which everybody learns, and, to teach them that basically it's those mistakes that will shape them and how they come out of them and how they learn from those experiences.
Beautiful. Lindsay?
I think right now I work in finance and I work at a bank, and there's been a big movement that did not exist 5 years ago when I started, or it was on the precipice, and now there's this huge movement to get women into specifically investment banking, but all the bank functions. And one of the things that comes up a lot right now is that the universities could transition right away. The industry, anyone who's been employed longer than 5 years, that wasn't a grassroots initiative. That was a top-down policy shift, and there's not full buy-in everywhere. And there's a group of people who are now being pushed out who previously were not, and as all people know, being pushed out doesn't feel very good. So anyways, I feel like there's this big opportunity right now to bridge this gap between university world, where you're telling people, hey, the future is female and it's 50-50 and there's equality here. And then people are going out into the industry and they're getting the entry-level job, but they're not necessarily being set up for success because they're still dealing with a system that's in the process of transition. And that's going to take quite a bit of time. So, and this was a comment made earlier actually by multiple people, but one of the big things that we're trying to do is go beyond mentorship, and we're turning it into a development program that sort of has two prongs, and one is really focused on being technically sound and a safe environment to do that. And we actually almost do the opposite of the other one, but we almost take on the perspective of like, that was wrong. That was an error. That was a mistake. That was a bust. And part of what we're trying to do there is it's safe to make mistakes. It's safe to fail. It's safe to receive criticism. Criticism's not a bad thing. And if women can feel that in an environment where they're made to feel very safe, you can identify in the real world when that was something that should be received as a healthy criticism, or that was something that was actually unhealthy and shouldn't be accepted. And then the other side of that is on actually the community aspect. So we're really trying to build a community, because when you're in a super male-dominated industry and the only women around you are junior like you and you don't have the senior women to look up to, if you feel like you have an army of people behind you, you are so much more comfortable to do what you're doing than if you look around and there's not a lot of people on top of you who look like you and who are like you. So we're trying to build a community that actually is spanning North America and connect these people to each other and say the experience you're experiencing is actually a uniformly women experience regardless of your background. People want to belong, they want to have a voice, and they want to be heard.
Beautiful. I really love embracing your failures. Like, it's really, really important to do that, because that's where the growth happens. And that's where you get people okay to want to ask for that, take that opportunity, because they're like, what's the worst that can happen? I'm going to learn from that experience, right? So it's really rich. So
I'm going to add just to that is, when the worst thing in the world is that you feel like you represent your gender, and if you get it wrong, then somehow you're letting down your entire gender. The permission to be wrong and have that be okay, that's like a weight is lifted off people's shoulders. The worst thing I thought could happen happened, and everything is fine.
Beautiful. Margaret.
Well, I honestly, for me, with my industry and my workplace, I make leaders out of everybody there. That's one goal. I make everybody's voices heard, and everybody has a part to play in our community. And by doing so, I do appreciate every input that every woman or man puts into the business. So I've always built leaders out of, and I think that is what makes us unique. They see me as the boss, they don't see me as the boss. because even when I enter a facility, although I manage the whole umbrella, the company, if I go into, like I manage like 15 facilities. If I go into a facility, I respect whoever is the lead in that facility. So I sit and they tell me what to do, and I do appreciate it because they know the job better as frontline workers than I do. So I could be the boss, but I'm not the boss then. So when we are having meetings, I sit and I let them lead. And I encourage them. And that is what I've brought. And I don't realize the impact it has on these women till sometimes my team or my community sends me an email and they thank me for how we conducted the meeting, that I made them feel valuable and they've grown. So that is what I aspire to do with everybody that comes through my path, comes my way, is to build leaders and confidence within them. So that's been me. That's my vision, and it's working. And because of that, we don't have staff over 10. We have people calling us to work with us. Somebody called me last night at 9 o'clock. I'm like, it's 9 o'clock, honey. Just want to work with your company. Just because they hear from what others say, the other employees know. So, and that's the change we are driving. And also, for our voices to be heard by Alberta Health Services, as women, I also feel that we do have a lot of initiative, imagination, and sometimes the guys who sit up there have no clue. So sometimes I get an idea and I'm fearless, as the other lady was saying. I'll call a director and I'll be like, this is what I have. What do you think? And I'm surprised to say we'll have a meeting and listen to you. So as women, I tell my colleagues and peers, we have a lot in us. Let's drive change with our initiative and what we have. Let's not be scared to approach. At the end of the day, it's a no or a yes you get. If you get a no, pick up the pieces, move on. If you get a yes, build on it. So that is what I strive to do at A Omega.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Great leadership, Margaret. Jackie.
So my approach, similar to Lindsay, my career has been in a male-dominated industry, capital markets, buy side and sell side, and the boys club and all the things Mad Men, all that stuff you've seen on television. I mean, that's founded in reality. It's terrible, but it's founded in reality. And for me, the way I feel I can contribute to driving change is two facets. One is everything these ladies have so eloquently said about supporting all of these other women. But I think more importantly, and what I take great pride in, is I hold my male peers and male superiors accountable. What's the worst that can happen? They don't like it. They yell at me. They can say whatever. It doesn't matter. I'm going to be an advocate for those other women that don't yet have their fearless voice. So I have my voice, and I'm going to use my voice for them and for the organization. So to me, being an advocate in holding my male peers and counterparts accountable is the way I feel you can drive change. Because the reality of it is, if you watch the dynamics, particularly in capital markets, the men are always holding each other accountable. I mean, I have watched some incredible battles, It makes me think of Star Wars and all these crazy things that go on. And they can walk away from that, patting each other on the back. Great conversation, you're right, those were good points. But for whatever reason, we women feel like we can't partake. So to me, let me do the battle. Let me in that ring for those other women, because we need to do it, right? And while it's not about my role, it's about, this is going to sound terrible to say, but it's kind of like boxing somebody across the side and say, hey, what did you just do? Like, do you not understand the implications of what you just said to that woman or that person, like, dude, go back there and, hold them, get them to feel safe, all those wonderful things. And I have no problem doing that. And, sometimes it gets me in trouble, but you know what? So what? It's helping people to think in the moment versus we do a lot of talking, especially at board meetings. I mean, I've heard so much at executive levels over the last 30 years about doing stuff for women. No offense, it's great talk, it's great programs, but in the moment when something happens, that's when you need the feedback right then and there. And they need to know that's not right, and hold them accountable. So that's how I'm trying to approach it.
Well, I actually do believe that's a really great way to adopt it, because I truly do believe there's a whole bucket full of our allies and supporters that really want to champion for women. And sometimes they miss it, not because they want to miss it, but because they don't have the practice, right? It's not consistent. So
right.
I really do believe that, stepping outside, maybe in that uncomfortable zone, holding them accountable is actually giving them the opportunities to succeed, right? And right. So that we're working, men and women working together. So ladies, fantastic dialogue and conversation. I really, really do value your leadership voice, and I'm super excited for those that, are looking for the stories. I highly, highly recommend. I mean, I look at the value of the leadership wisdom and the stories, the thousands, hundreds of thousands of education, lived experience, knowledge, wisdom that's in this book is mind-blowing. And so I just want to say thank you for being so authentic and relatable and so committed to driving change and empowering women to succeed. So thank you, ladies, and I look forward to the epic journey ahead.
Thanks, Monica.
Thanks, Monica.
Thank you. Thank you, ladies.